Well, hello and good evening and welcome. Was a frack-free year in the UK. So the frack-free or the anti-fracking community in the UK achieving a tremendous success, because I certainly didn't expect to be in that position at the end of 2013 when I started the Fracture Future Tour back in February of last year. So, all to play for. Our challenge is to ensure that 2014 is another frack-free year, 2015 being an election year, so hopefully we can get this whole abomination nailed sometime in the next 18 months. Meanwhile, episode 9 was a little bit delayed, and episode 9 unfortunately only got uploaded about 36 hours ago due to some technical issues. Mainly revolving around the west coast of Ireland, where the episode was originally going to be uploaded from, being absolutely battered by an Atlantic storm, and our technician losing all connectivity. Anyway, it went up on late on Sunday evening, I think it was, and it's had over 1,000 views already, so that's a pretty good sign that maybe people are starting to take more interest in the subject. Well, if they weren't, they certainly are now. And as you're going to see as we go through the evening, I have to say thank you to the Greater Manchester Police and the TAZ, what do they call themselves? The Tactical Assault Zombie... Oh, no, sorry, it's the TAU, Tactical Assault Units, who have managed to achieve what we were not achieving, and they have managed to get the Barton Moss campaign global publicity. So more of that a little bit later, and we'll do a quick review of some of the things that have been going on over the last couple of weeks. Well, I'm sure that most of you are in the process of doing your homework, and you're ploughing through this document, the Department of Energy and Climate Change report on the Strategic Environmental Assessment for further onshore oil and gas licensing. Yes. Bedtime reading. Guaranteed to cure your insomnia. Well, I'm ploughing through it, and I have to say it's quite disturbing reading. And what it demonstrates is that the constant comments that we hear about robust regulation, and I might mention that once or twice as we go through the evening, is absolutely a crock of crap. Right, let's have a look at what this is all about. Because what this is all about is putting the rest of the country up for grabs by the oil and gas industry. So if we look at the screen here, what we see, and hopefully this will be becoming very familiar to you by now, the green areas on the map there are the areas that are designated as having potentially viable shale gas resources. And it's pretty much accepted that the Bolan shale deposits, which run right across the north of England, are potentially the most incredible resource of shale gas, quite possibly even on the planet, due to the fact that the geology there is some 5,000 feet thick. The yellow areas on the map are the areas that are already licensed. And basically, what this document that I've just flicked through addresses is the availability of the rest of the country. So this whole issue of hydraulic fracturing is not something that is about Balcombe or right now about Barton Moss. It is absolutely coming to a location near you, unless you take an interest in the subject and let it be known that you do not want this nightmare unleashed anywhere near you, your family, your neighbours, or anybody you know come to that, because it doesn't take too much to take a look and see for yourself that wherever this has been unleashed beneath the community, it has resulted in the contamination of the water, of the soil, and of the air. And I'm going to show you a short video a little bit later of an impromptu exchange that I had with one of the police officers in the front line at Barton Moss just a few days ago. Now, despite what we're going to see in a little while and that occurred in Manchester earlier today, I do want to acknowledge that what you see on the screen here is not Barton Moss. Manchester has UK license plates on its vehicles. This is Romania. And this is what is going on in Romania now as Chevron effectively take control of the Romanian government. Now, of course, David Cameron is anticipating a large influx of Romanians into this country. And in fact, when I was in a pub doing some editing a few days ago in Earlham, the pub was broadcasting or had on the TV the football from the Romanian league, and I asked the landlord whether he was just simply preparing for the anticipated influx. Well, the Romanian police maybe had taken a few lessons from the Manchester police, but as you can see, they're in full riot gear there, and they're getting rather heavy-handed. But whilst I'm going to acknowledge that the Manchester police haven't quite yet reached this stage of the game, there's very little doubt in my mind that the Tactical Assault Unit in particular want to get to this stage of the game sooner rather than later. And it has to be said that the only thing, in my opinion, preventing them from doing so is the British judiciary. Because if it was left to the police, to effectively the enforcers of the corporate agenda, then they would be behaving like this. But fortunately, the British judiciary does have something to say about this. And as we are going to see a little bit later, the Manchester police pay little regard to the guidelines that the Crown Prosecution Service set out, preferring instead to adopt their own rules in an attempt to intimidate not only the protectors that are on camp, but also to try to discourage people from coming down to join the protection community. But the reality is that here we are in the first week of 2014, and unless we raise the game, and unless we are able to get an increasing number of people down to Barton Moss and raise awareness in every other location around the country where this abomination is going to be unleashed, then unfortunately the British government and the corporations will assume that they have the social license thanks to public apathy. And our challenge is to make sure that that doesn't happen. So just to refresh your memory as to where we're at, because if you're anywhere near Barton Moss, then I would absolutely encourage you to come down and visit the camp. And if there's a convoy going on, then you can join the carnival atmosphere of leading the convoy up to the gates of the iGas well site. If there's not a convoy going on, then it's a very sociable environment. And if you want to learn about the fracking agenda or about the process, then there are people there that would be more than happy to guide you through it. Now, Barton Moss, let's go back to our map here. What we see here in the purple are the iGas, petroleum exploration and development licenses there in the purple. In the yellow is Dart Energy. That's a company we're going to be talking about a little later on in the program. But iGas, in my opinion, are the most significant threat in terms of getting their bits in the ground and starting to frack in this country. So Barton Moss is right up on the northeastern tip of the iGas peninsula there. There we go. All wonders of our technology. I now have mouse control over this. So there's Barton Moss right up in the northeastern corner. And all of this area is intended to be targeted, not necessarily next month or next year, but certainly within the next decade or so, then we can expect to see these well sites crop up right across this area if this agenda gets underway. Now let's bring it down to a little bit closer here. Here we have the M62, this is the M60, the A57, the Barton Aerodrome, and the iGas well site is right here, right adjacent to the M62. And it certainly has a lot more visibility from the motorway, as we can see here, now that the rig has arrived. The rig actually arrived on Friday of last week. Unfortunately, there weren't too many people to lead the procession of lorries there when they first arrived, just after 8 o'clock in the morning. But fortunately, after an hour or so, there were some 25, 30 people there, increasing to about 40 later in the day. But let's take a look at some of the events that have been occurring since I last put an episode of Fracking Nightmare together. Some of you may remember this from Borkum, where in the latter days of the Borkum campaign, there were a number of individual initiatives to slow down the quadrilla vehicles going into the Borkum well site. And this was one of the most creative initiatives, creation by Jamie Spears on a scaffolding tripod. And then once he climbed to the top of the tripod there, he superglued his hands to the top of the scaffolding, causing the police or the protester removal team, or whatever the Sussex equivalent was, some consternation as they tried to release him. I believe they actually used coke, the liquid type that is, not the Nigella Lawson type. They used coke to actually free his hands from the superglue. Well, Jamie is still on bail from that little escapade, but he arrived at Borkum shortly after Christmas with a mischievous look on his face. Well, I don't think he'd been at Barton Moss for more than probably 18 hours when this occurred. So let's have a look at Jamie on the afternoon of the day after he arrived at Barton Moss.
Yes, I have made that. Just for different ways? No, I don't think there is.
So, Jamie, we just heard that the protester removal crew have given up. They said they can't deal with it. It's outside their expertise.
Yeah, brilliant.
Oops, sorry. They'll give me the key.
Sorry?
They'll give me the key.
I lost that. Didn't vote the hay stuff through it.
Wait till you drop it, we'll go and have a look at that.
Transfer to speed, is it? Trav, are you happy? To speed? Yeah. Yeah, the weapon's been removed, it's in custody.
Good man. We love you, Jamie! We do!
Solidarity!
Please go walking down.
Wait here a second.
Do you want us to put the line on? Yeah. Right. Do you want to put the line on? Let the detention man out.
So that was Jamie, and he had a bicycle D-lock there around his neck, which he ran alongside of the truck and then hooked the D-lock around a bracket on the truck and unfortunately mislaid the key. thus causing the protestor removal team. There's some debate as to whether this is a unique Mancunian spelling of the word protester, but the protestor removal team taking about an hour or so to work with an angle grinder and cut through the D-lock. So Jamie was a little bit disappointed that it didn't take too much longer, but this lock-on was a reaction against the tactical assault unit. The relationship between the protectors and the normal officers of the Greater Manchester Police is actually quite cordial. And apart from one or two isolated instances, has generally been one of understanding and cooperation. But when the tactical assault unit are put in the front line, the whole demeanour changes, and all to gain an extra 5 or 10 minutes in terms of getting the trucks out of the lane. The reality is, IGAS will have certainly acknowledged and accepted by now that they are having to pay for a full day hire of vehicle and driver to get their equipment into the well site. Because by the time the convoy is assembled and the convoy is escorted up Barton Moss Lane, the vehicles are unloaded and then escorted back down the lane. It's not going to be possible for the vehicles to be used on any other job. So it's really just about establishing who is top dog. So the TAU, the Tactical Assault Unit, are normally lined out about 100 yards or so after the convoy comes out of the gate. And it's becoming very evident, despite their denials, that the Tactical Assault Unit have a target. They have a goal. They have a number of arrests which they are expected to make. And despite the fact that we always ask them what the quota is, and they always deny that there is a quota, they always seem to achieve their quota. Well, in terms of getting that extra 5 or 10 minutes, this has stimulated a reaction. This is basic science, isn't it? With every action, there is a reaction. And every time the TAU are wheeled out, it seems that there is a reaction. And so in an effort to shave 5 or 10 minutes off of the time that it takes to get the vehicles down the road, the reaction is to cause a delay that's going to be about an hour or maybe a little bit more. So I guess the onus really is on the police. But let's see what's happening, because Jamie, the following day, celebrated his overnight stay in the police cells. He said that the hospitality of the Greater Manchester Police was well, I wouldn't say to be recommended, but yeah, it was quite a he spent the evening meditating and learning how to do a headstand. Well, he because he was already on bail from his escapade in Borkham, he was forced to go straight to the magistrate's court, which actually worked in his favour because it meant that he was given unconditional bail, whereas the police have been trying to arrest people and then kick them out of the police station with bail conditions that prevent them from going back to the Barton Moss camp. But Jamie, having to go straight to court, managed to get immediate unconditional bail. And so here we see Jamie, 2 hours after coming out of the court, back on the front line. Now, this is serious commitment. And the Manchester Police perhaps need to start acknowledging that the protection community is not breaking the law, as we have many discussions on the front line as to the appropriate pace to be walking in front of the vehicles. But the Greater Manchester Police seem to want to completely ignore the fundamental human right to protest, which was upheld in the Royal Courts of Justice by Justice Lang when West Sussex County Council tried to evict the camp from the Verge side at Borkham. Now, I think this is a good point at which to take a break. So, catch with you in part 2.
"60% of the English countryside is under threat from fracking, a process which has transformed the landscape in many parts of the United States and Australia, and contaminated the drinking water and air with highly toxic chemicals and gases.
1 in 3 hydraulic fracturing was using a carcinogen. So it really is a chemical cocktail that goes into the earth, of which up to 40% remains there.
The grandchildren were in the bath and they started screaming and everything that was in the water was burnt.
The MDs have been instructed not to report any negative health effects that they believe to be associated with living over a gas field.
There's nothing inherent about the shale gas process that is going to lead to problems.
Some of this material was actually taken to a large sewage treatment works, which had no capacity to handle radioactive materials of this kind.
800,000 gallons was dumped into the Manchester Ship Canal.
50 seismic events were recorded during just 6 fracking treatments.
What is the minimum depth that the fracking will fracture?
We can't tell you until we drill the exploration.
Have you no idea whatsoever? Because it doesn't look like you've done your research.
Shale gas is part of the future and we will make it happen.
We are just numbers and we are sat on this rich vein of gas, and they will do and say anything to get that gas out of the ground.
And welcome back to part 2 of Fracking Nightmare. Now, as you have seen, things are hotting up on Barton Moss. And at the weekend, I caught a rather shadowy character. Here you see him on the screen. This shadowy character bent down over the screens on the bridge over the M62. Now, unfortunately, I was quite some distance away, so my camera was on the longest throw lens, so I couldn't get too close, but I was able to catch that he seemed to be decorating the fencing and the eye-gas gates. And although I didn't get anywhere close to seeing his face, after he'd run off, I saw that what he'd actually sprayed right across the gates of the iGas compound was iGas frack off. Now, this guy was obviously very well educated, so he was clearly not a member of the TAU, because everything was spelt right. Anyway, I heard earlier in the day that there had been a number of serious incidents in Manchester that night, which the police hadn't been able to respond to due to a lack of resources. But the heinous crime of spraying orange paint on the green mesh on the bridge of the M62 and on the green mesh gates of the iGas well site actually attracted 2 police vehicles. And so here we see the specialist unit of the Manchester Graffiti Police. Now, this is a very, very specialist unit. They're trained. They have to be able to spell, to be able to identify exactly what has been written, and they did indeed confirm that it was igas frack off. So, if you want to commit an offence in Manchester, it would seem that you can pretty much get away with most things, but not spraying orange paint on green mesh or green fences. Well, meanwhile, another convoy arrived today. And unfortunately, of course, I wasn't there because I'd had to head back to the southwest for tonight's show. But I was following the action on the live stream that was coming out from the compound. And lo and behold, what did I see first thing this morning? 3 very brave girls here had taken up a position in the lane, and they had actually cemented their arms in these concrete tubes, with one of the tubes actually going through a concrete barrel here. Now, I don't have the time, unfortunately, this evening to really play the video of this, but you can find the video online. And as you will see, the protestor removal team actually had a little bit more of a job to free these 3 young women than they did with Jamie's D-lock. So obviously a little bit more effort had gone into this. Well, there's another angle there of them all laid out across the road. There was one interesting moment when one of the girls needed to answer a call of nature, which did call for a little bit of creativity, and I'm pleased to say that all of the male police officers did do the gentlemanly thing and turn their backs. Well, the Manchester police, when they arrived on, I think it was Friday of last week, they actually told me, the police liaison officers told me that there had been a report of a flare being fired at a police helicopter trying to make a landing at the Barton aerodrome next door to the campsite. Now, he didn't exactly tell me with a lot of conviction, and of course my immediate response was that that was absolutely ludicrous. There had certainly not been any flares set off from the camp. And it was absolutely preposterous to suggest that. And I said that this sounded as though it was something to try to demonize the camp or to set the camp up. Well, I should have written about it, shouldn't I? I should have written up that conversation, because what actually happened today demonstrated that this was indeed the case. Because whilst the girls were being freed from their concrete sleeves, we see on the screen here, we have another group which was probably part of the TAU or another specialist group. This is a search crew. And over the weekend, a warrant had been granted to search all the tents at Barton Moss on the allegation that a flare had been shot from the camp or the vicinity of the camp at a police helicopter. Now, your first clue that this is a complete crock of junk would be that if a flare had been fired at a police helicopter, then pretty much every officer on duty in Manchester would have been told to head down to Barton Moss, because it would have been classified as a suspected terrorist attack. But no, not even a simple pass through of the camp to see whether there was anything going on there at all. It's left for 4 days, basically, until a warrant can be granted to search the camp. Well, needless to say, they didn't exactly do it with any finesse, and the police went into the tents and they threw out the protesters' belongings, they threw out their bedding. This is in atrocious conditions. Wind and rain, and trampled all over the tents, trampled over people's clothes. Not to put too fine a point on it, the behaviour is disgusting. But of course, this is what the Greater Manchester Police wanted to achieve, because they wanted to intimidate the protection community. Well, I'd just like to read out a letter that was forwarded to me earlier today. And I don't know whether it's actually been sent to the Greater Manchester Police. I believe it's in the process of doing so. But the letter reads, "Dear Greater Manchester Police, although I am still appalled by your fabrication of flares being fired at helicopters by residents of the Barton Moss Community Protection Camp, which I know for a fact is utter balderdash, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for raiding the camp and harassing everyone today, as it has made international headlines. As I'm sure you are well aware, we are always trying to make the headlines and raise awareness on the issue of fracking. This can be very difficult when we have to compete with the likes of Justin Bieber, Britney Spears and Rihanna. But thanks to today's raid, we have been featured in the news on every inhabited continent. Before today, this would have been unfathomable. As you very well know, it can be difficult getting people out of bed early in the morning in the dead of winter in order to march in front of lorries whilst being assaulted by your staff. But this publicity stunt of yours has done all the hard work for us. The Greater Manchester Police truly are at the forefront of Britain's anti-fracking movement. No one group has done more to promote the cause than the Greater Manchester Police. Please feel free to help raise more awareness and sympathy for our cause in the future. So despite the fact that the Greater Manchester Police are very well aware that I carry press credentials, they're also well aware, of course, that I sympathise with the cause of the protection community. But nonetheless, they were videoed taking 20 minutes to go through my tent. And I'm actually now awaiting for the knock on my door, claiming that they found a rocket-propelled grenade launcher under the sleeping bag in my tent, and out the back, no doubt, a stockpile of missiles. How preposterous can you get? You know very well that the whole purpose of this protest is peaceful protest. Peaceful protest. You know very well that there hasn't been a single case of any individual even beginning to look as though they want to get violent. Yet, you are quoted in the Daily Mail. One of your officers, Chief Superintendent Roberts, said, "An attack on the police of this nature has nothing whatsoever to do with whether or not exploratory drilling is right or wrong." The assumption being that the non-existent flare was an attack on the police. He goes on, "Whilst I recognise the genuine concerns of many of the protesters in relation to exploratory drilling, it is obvious that there is also an element of regular protesters from outside the Greater Manchester area who seem more interested in seeking confrontation with the police." Now, Chief Inspector Roberts, you are either being fed a complete crock by your officers on the front line, or you are fabricating a statement to serve another agenda. Now, you know, I go to sleep at night with this mantra in my head, which the protesters keep singing, which is GGGMP, IGAS, police, or something like that. You know, and unfortunately, it's looking more and more like that you are simply there to progress the corporate agenda. So you know that you have an obligation to facilitate peaceful protest. And now you, the Greater Manchester Police, are trying to incite aggression by claiming that there is aggression from the protection community when you know very well that there is none. And if you try to suggest otherwise, then you also know that if you try and make those statements in court, you will be committing acts of perjury. Your challenge, the Greater Manchester Police, and particularly the officers in charge of the TAU, your responsibility is to establish the integrity of the police. But you're doing a great job. You're showing that the Greater Manchester Police is far more interested in maintaining its hard man reputation, a reputation that actually the Sussex Police warned us about in Borkham. But I can categorically assure you that the protection community, whether it's at Barton Moss, Davy Holme, Doe Green, or anywhere else that IGAS or any of the other companies try and get their bits in the ground, will be peaceful. And I can also guarantee that over the course of this week, you are going to see the reaction from the local community to your behaviour today. You're going to see the numbers of people down at Barton Moss increasing dramatically. And if you bring the TAU out onto the front line, you're also going to see that the length of time it takes to get the trucks in or out is also going to increase dramatically. Not that I have any inside information, just call it a hunch. Meanwhile, I wanted to show you this picture here. This is one of the evidence gatherers who was actually, dare I say, viewing a different reality today from some of the protectors. And when he was challenged on his version of events, I am told he questioned whether or not we were talking from the same song sheet. Now, everything that's occurring right now, everything that is happening, I am going to ask the question, does some of this come from the evidently fertile mind of Amanda Webster. Now, you'll remember from the edition of Fracking Nightmare before Christmas, Amanda Webster was the VIP given her own personal escort by the Greater Manchester Police, who refused to share her identity with me. Big mistake, Amanda, because we established that you are the Assistant Police and Crime Commissioner with the Lancashire Police, but you are also a practising solicitor with Harrison Drury, and your specialism is protest busting. So, were you at Barton Moss that day under the auspices of the Lancashire Police or Harrison Drury, as a client of iGas or Quadrilla, or maybe even the British government? We don't expect you to tell us. You wouldn't even tell us your name. But we have the Freedom of Information Act requests out, and we also have some questions to the Solicitors Regulatory Authority about a potential conflict of interests here. But it's becoming very evident that the protection community is having an impact on iGas. The protection community is allegedly costing the Manchester Police £40,000 each and every day. Of course, that's completely absurd, because you don't need that number of police officers there. You're trying to make something out of something that isn't there. And of course, iGas, well, the costs, whatever they may be that you're experiencing, are going to be the same for all of the companies who think they're going to pioneer the shale gas or coal bed methane industry in the UK. So get used to it. Those tax breaks going to come in useful, aren't they? Well, meanwhile, I have on the line, I think, Tina Louise. Tina, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you yet. There, I can see you now. I can see you now. Wow, you look exactly like the photograph I've got on the other screen. Can we just flip the screen here? This is the photograph of you when you were in the House of Lords. Of course, we've spoken to you since your appearance in the House of Lords, and that very interesting experience that you had there.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's go back. Actually, I like it better when I can see your lips moving. So, Tina Louise, you're up in the Fylde Peninsula. Now, I believe that you actually visited the Barton Moss protection community today. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it was just a heck of a day. I never lose my cool, or I try not to. I mean, the House of Lords pushed me to nearly losing it. But today, that was it. I just completely lost dignity, I think. I ended up swearing at the police, and I was so frustrated and so angry. I don't think I've ever... It was just witnessing not only the cruelty, but the absolute absurdity of the situation. The fact that we're having to do this, that those poor people are in the cold and the rain, and that we've just been essentially abandoned, and now we're being bullied by our own police force that are working on behalf of iGas. That chant you were saying was... GMP, iGas, Private Army.
That's the one.
That chart, that was it, yeah. And they are.
Sadly.
It was quite overwhelming, really, today, just to watch how much pressure they apply, how cruel they are, how inhumane their responses are, that when you're looking into their eyes or trying to engage, you're getting nothing, and how smarmy the ones in blue, the liaison officers, when they do that fake kindness. I just think it's so ugly. It's just ugly and inhumane.
Well, I have to say that I'm afraid Ben, Lee, Andy, Emma, Jackie, I'm afraid that your colleagues have seriously let you down today, and it is going to be very, very difficult for you to re-establish any kind of rapport. I appreciate, and I'm sure many others do, that you're in a very difficult position, but nothing can condone or justify what occurred today. Would you agree with that, Tina?
What, the lock-on? The cementing of arms?
Well, I mean, that in of itself. But I mean, the subsequent behaviour of the police.
Oh, good God, yes.
I mean, yeah, the lock-ons, when we first met with the representatives of the Greater Manchester Police, and it was purely a sort of random meeting, it was Ben Cowgill. In fact, I broadcast the brief interview I did with Ben on an earlier edition of Fracking Nightmare. And in the discussion, it was acknowledged that there would be random acts of creativity which would be outside of the day-to-day protest activity, if you like. But it's very clear that somebody is just deciding that they're going to ramp it up from the police side. And like I said, unfortunately, for every action there is a reaction. And fortunately, the British judiciary are very supportive of the fundamental human right to protest.
Yeah. Well, we've got to hope, though, that incidents like, we can't trust the police. And, it would be okay if you could say that and just say, I'm only saying that because I'm an activist now. But you've only got to look at Hillsborough and look at Plebgate to know that our police lie. We have to face facts and start getting realistic. And so much of the population, no, trust the police. Well, you know what? I have trusted the police. I trusted them when I was burgled. They were fantastic. They were really supportive and helpful and kind, and they did their jobs well. And that was when I was burgled. But then when I go out to use my human right to protest, then not only do they they really belittle and attack. And, you ask them, do you understand why we're here? And they go, I can't engage about that, or I can't speak about that. Well, why not? Why? Why can't they be allowed to understand what it is that drags people like us out into the wet and the cold to do this? Do they think we just do it for fun? It's like when they talk about regular protesters that they did in that report today about the flares, about it there being an element. Well, what? Do you think people just do this for fun and this is how people get their kicks? And this whole flare incident, I think it could end up being their Achilles heel, because I know in my heart there's no one on that site that would have done it. And so either this didn't happen. Where's the evidence?
No, there is no evidence. And the police know there is no evidence.
Yeah, so what right then did they get a search warrant? Where's the discharged flare? Where's the evidence document? Where's the notation of this incident? And like you pointed out earlier, where the hell were they if it was something so serious and so dangerous to aircraft, and which indeed it would be, that they didn't come down that second? They're there in minutes when we move or breathe or even do anything that looks like we might.
And the reality is there are so many CCTV cameras around that area, both at the airfield, the Salford Stadium, and I'm sure many other locations. And the one thing I could pretty much guarantee is there ain't no flare on any of the footage from those cameras. This is a total construct. And let me tell you, for the Greater Manchester Police, if you show me the footage, the irrefutable evidence of a flare, I will retract my observation. But up until then, as far as I'm concerned, and many others are concerned, and I know others in the Manchester Police are concerned, this is a fabrication. We're just going to take a break in a second, Tina, but I just want to read a letter that I got earlier today. And obviously, needless to say, I'm going to avoid mentioning the actual location. This is the letter. Dear Ian, I am a Bobby in such and such a county. I've been trying to raise the awareness over fracking at work, mainly by talking about it and putting posters up everywhere with the relevant information on that you talk about in your presentations. These posters always seem to stay up for a couple of days, then they are invariably taken down, I'm assuming, by senior management. But I just print some more and put them back up again. Anyway, I was chatting to one of my colleagues about it, and she was extremely concerned about the environmental impact and the health impacts. Her father-in-law is a very high-level Freemason in the local area and consequently has a great deal of influence. So she has given him one of my leaflets and to take along to the next lodge meeting. He was apparently pretty shocked by the information and has said that he would do his own research on the subject before raising it at the next meeting. I'm pretty hopeful that he will come round to our way of thinking and therefore use his influence within the circles in which he moves to help stop the fracking agenda in our county before it starts. I'll keep you updated in any case.
Wow.
Now, it's very evident that, there are one or two policemen around the country who retain the capability and capacity for independent thought. But I'm going to go into the break with a very short video clip from an exchange, an impromptu exchange that I had with a female police officer in the front line at the end of last week.
Anyway. Yeah, all we're asking is for you to keep moving, that's all we're asking. That's the point. Absolutely.
just going to build on her comments about the farming.
As long as we keep moving, guys, that's all we're asking you to do.
Helpful.
Once again,
this is the clip where she says that we're not taking into account farmers.
We're not saying that you are obstructing, we're just asking you to move, aren't we?
Yeah, you can catch it
All we're
later.
asking is that.
But then I just want to take some quotes from Oswald's article, and he's the professor from Duke University.
This is exactly what they do care about.
And then we'll come back to you.
If they care, then
No, have you checked what this process will do? Have you checked, ma'am? Do you realise that everywhere in the world that this process has been unleashed, it has resulted in the contamination of water and the soil? It's made agriculture impossible. Are you aware of this?
Currently, I don't.
Everywhere in the world.
What made you say shit, Mike?
In other words, you haven't.
What made Mike say shit?
I don't know. He does it all the time, so
Your
but
observations
sometimes
and
actually
comments are effectively based on
it
ignorance.
can mean something.
absolutely not.
They were.
Did you try turning it on and off again, Mike?
No, you made the observation about protecting people's livelihoods, and that's exactly what people are here
That's
for.
fine, okay? We can just keep moving to engage in relation to that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You didn't have to say anything either.
No. Guys, what I need you to do is keep moving forwards, please, because you're actually going a lot
conversation by
slower.
saying, yeah, you got, and it was unsolicited.
What are your
Said
thoughts?
that you people are not taking account the local community or the local farm.
What are your thoughts?
And of course I jumped on
Based on your own
farms.
knowledge, you don't have any thoughts.
Keep it going. I don't need to tell you any of my thoughts.
About how I protest.
Guys, we're just asking to keep it moving, aren't we? Just keep going.
Stop pushing people, everybody's moving.
We're going to break.
If you take an active interest in maintaining the optimum health and well-being of yourself and your family, the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is the magazine you've been waiting for. Having taken Australia and New Zealand by storm, the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine is now available in the UK and Europe. Visit www.nznaturalmed.co.uk or call 01626 337 531 to order your copy now.
Oh, caught me having my glass of water there. Right. That's the thing about live TV, yeah? Oh, by the way, talking about live TV, Anne-Marie Wilkinson, Director of Communications with iGas. I'm still waiting for your letter. You remember you told me some 6 weeks ago that a lot of what I put out on Fracking Nightmare was lies, I quote. And I invited you to come on to the show and share with the audience what you perceive to be the lies that I put out. Well, you declined that invitation, but you told me you would write to me and spell out the lies that I've been sharing. Well, we're still waiting for that letter. And as we are all aware, of course, iGas cannot debate this topic any more than the British government can debate the topic. They can only hide behind the claim of robust regulatory bodies. Anyway, before the break there, you saw the completely impromptu exchange with one of the police officers there who was trying to get the line to move forward and talking with them by claiming that the protection community wasn't taking account of the local community or the local farmers. Well, unfortunately, of course, I happened to be in earshot and I did respond, as you saw. But just in case that officer or any of her colleagues are watching, I am very sure that you are given briefings before you come down to the Barton Moss protection community, and you're all told that these are professional protesters who would protest anything. The reality, of course, is somewhat different. The protection community is very well informed and very well educated on the subject of hydraulic fracturing. And, of course, had more of the officers accepted the offers of the DVDs that I presented to them last week, then even more officers might be educated. But let me refer those officers to an article that appeared in the British media a couple of months ago now. It certainly appeared in the Independent and in the Telegraph. And this was the headline: Fracking sparks food safety concern as expert warns of serious risk to livestock. So to the officer who I was addressing last week, let me just offer a few quotes from this article. The study has been written by Professor Robert Oswald of Duke University in the US. He's the co-author of the first study into links between hydraulic fracturing and sickness in farm animals. And he said his findings of death and deformities in American livestock are so alarming that Britain should halt the growth of the practice while further research is conducted. Well, fortunately, at the moment, there's nothing to grow because it's non-existent, and the protection community has every intention of it remaining that way. Professor Oswald goes on. He's an expert in molecular medicine at Cornell University. It compiled 24 incidents across 6 US states where livestock on farms adjacent to drilling sites died or suffered illness, including reproductive and neurological problems, potentially following exposure to fracking chemicals. Among the incidents investigated by Professor Oswald and a colleague was a leak in Louisiana of wastewater from fracking, which allegedly left 17 cows dead from respiratory failure. In Pennsylvania, a herd suffered a 50% stillbirth rate after cows grazed in a field contaminated with chemicals spilling from a waste pit. And finally, farmers in Northern Ireland, where energy firms are also hoping to start drilling. Now, Northern Ireland is really being targeted. The whole of the area surrounding Lough Neagh is being targeted. And although Belfast doesn't get its water from Lough Neagh, I think some 80-odd thousand people actually do get their water from Lough Neagh. And what is being proposed is that the entire area around the loch be, well, it already is licensed, but be drilled and fracked. So anyway, the farmers highlighted their opposition with a protest at this summer's G8 conference. And John Sheridan, a farmer and official with the Ulster's Farmer Union, said the food and drink industry is worth close to €30 billion in Ireland, and fracking could ruin that industry. Well, it's having an impact on the industry in the US, in Canada, in Australia. The Irish farmers certainly recognise that it will have an impact in Ireland. So what makes us think that the UK or Britain is any different? The reality is that our politicians are so arrogant and so ignorant in their arrogance that they believe that robust regulatory bodies will prevent the contamination in this country. Well, we don't expect anyone to take anything we say at face value. We simply want people to investigate it for themselves. You will never hear anybody from the industry or from the British government say, please don't take my word for it. Please go and research this and take a look for yourself and come to your own conclusion. They are working on the basis that you are so engrossed in Corrie, in X Factor, in Strictly, in Big Brother, that even if you had the inclination, there's something more attractive to prevent you from looking at it. This is completely outrageous. Well, you know, the reality is that iGas certainly won't talk to us. Anne-Marie Wilkinson has been invited to come on the show, on a live show. No possibility of editing or curtailing and participate in a debate, but she won't. When in Manchester, I believe that the Salford Star was speaking with the Chief Operating Officer of iGas, John Claymore, and during the course of the interview, he threw him a curveball. And he said, so this guy Ian Crane, is he a complete nutter? Is he completely off his head? Apparently the response is not repeatable on a family show. But he won't come on the show and he won't participate in a live debate. But the offer stands to Andrew Austin, John Claymore, Dave Kerr, Chris Bone, or Anne-Marie Wilkinson. Any of the iGas players, you're very welcome to come on the show. I will give you completely free rein, provided you agree to answer my questions. Now, Tina, are you still with me?
Yep, still here.
Still here. Okay, so we've obviously you guys are preparing for Quadrilla's return or potential return to the Fylde Peninsula, but
Yeah, but that rig though, they've got our rig in Salford, so that rig that's there in Salford is the actual Quadrilla rig. They're renting it to them, I believe. So that's the one that we had here before. When it comes back here, it'll be at Singleton, we believe. And we've done all our planning objections and doing what we can, but we think that they've just done something rather sneaky, which is we noticed a change in the number on the planning application. And now all of the objections that went with the original planning application appear to have disappeared. So someone's looking into that to find out if they slightly adjusted it in order to make all of those objections disappear. So we're waiting to find out about that. But in all honesty, the front line is wherever the drill is at that minute. And so it's as much our backyard, anywhere in the country is our backyard. You know, water and air have no boundaries. So wherever in the country this is, I'm local to it because it's my air and water.
But the key point as well, Tina, is that you are part of the backroom team, if you like. I mean, you come down, you were down at Borkham and showing support every weekend you could get down there, and the same again at Barton Moss. But you're part of the backroom team as well that are also going through the planning applications and the environment applications, etc., and looking for any potential opportunity to shut them down, basically.
It's amazing the diversity at which we all come at this. You know, everyone comes from different angles. And today when I was walking through Barton Moss, a woman came up to me and she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't be on site more often." I thought, "Nor can I." And I said, she said, but she does everything she can online. She was a flutist called Jo, and she had a bad injury on her arm, so she couldn't be on site for long. But they just come down and spend half an hour. Every little bit of input really helps. And, you know, the people who do it online, that's really important. It's really important to share. And where you said people are distracted and there's this complacency and acceptance that, you know what it is? It's not even just an acceptance. I think it's defeatist. You know, we're so used to our government railroading us. And you hear so often people go, well, you can't stop it. So, well, what are we supposed to do? Just lay back and take everything that's done to us? Then it's such a defeatist attitude. And so it lacks bravery and it lacks integrity. You know, and there is, I can only say that anybody who's not being active, there is no more rewarding way to be, because at least you're being true and honest to yourself and what you believe in. You know, and whatever angle you take, whether it's sharing a petition, sharing a news story, watching this program and then sharing that information with your colleagues, your family, anyone you can get to listen to you, then every single bit helps the cause. You know, and it is a really clear and present danger. This isn't something we can say, oh, well, you need to fix the system. The system's a mess. Well, yes, but to redefine the system and make it work for the people is a bit of a longer task. But this is clear, present, and immediate.
Well, it's chemical warfare. I mean, this without beating around the bush. This is chemical warfare,
and it will also lead. You can see where it goes. You know, there's the terror, and I am not but there is the terrifying thought that this then leads to the need for the privatization of water supplies, because they will damage our water supplies. That, you know, clean air won't be just a given. You know, you won't just accept that these things are facts.
Oh, it'll be metered. Clean air, if you want to breathe clean air within a generation, you will pay for it. Otherwise,
but how dare we give away these rightful things that belong to the next generation? How dare we allow that to slip through? And anyone sitting on their butt not doing something, then I think that they're they are bad people in not doing it.
Well, the challenge is going to increase dramatically, because this is the document that basically puts the whole of the country at risk. And I think that in the south of the country, there's a lot of grassroots activity there, and I think that all the companies that are looking to get their bits in the ground in the south are in for a hell of a challenge. But in the north, Manchester has been, in some respects, disappointing. I mean, it's actually good, I guess, that we're having this experience now, because if anybody was getting complacent about the capacity of the anti-fracking community to get this shut down, then Manchester has shaken that. And even today, I mean, what it's done is it's demonstrated that, we need to have the feet on the ground, we need the boots on the ground. This is right now the greatest challenge that the British people have ever faced, and we're facing it from our own government.
But it's tough. It's so tough. It's not only exhausting as a subject to explore and understand, which is again what they're counting on, it's really exhausting to constantly confront it. And for the people at Barton Moss, I mean, when we did Bolcombe, it was, you know, it was summer, it was quite lovely, and it was enchanting, and the people were enchanting, and it was very clearly defined community. Whereas Barton Moss is much harder for the protectors there. I cannot believe what they endure. When I left there today, I was wet through even on a waterproof coat, and I couldn't imagine I could get warm and dry again. How it must be when you've got to get back into a tent tonight after all that rain. And also because...
And wet bedding, thanks to the Greater Manchester Police.
They'd thrown it all out and got it all wet. It was a horrible, horrible thing to do to your fellow man, whether you agree or don't agree with what he's doing. You don't treat people like that. And I think that was part of the rage today, was the way they treat human beings. You know, we're human beings. What do they think we're doing? You know, I can't look at those people and not admire them for standing by their convictions. And then I look at the police acting like robots, doing as they're told. It's what I'm commanded. And I have no respect for this.
Yeah. Tina, I got to tell you that never in my wildest dreams did I ever anticipate waking up on a Christmas and New Year's morning under canvas on the outskirts of Greater Manchester. I've been camping there for, I've camped there, I think, for 32 nights over the last 8 weeks or so. And I got to say, it's an amazing group of people. Absolutely. And of course, it's rotating because, you know, nobody can be there the whole time. You know, we've all got other stuff that we have to do. But it is a fantastic group of people. The great tragedy is that, unfortunately, the population of Greater Manchester, and don't get me wrong, I mean, there have been a number, obviously the infamous Anne Power, who's featured on this show a number of times, the 82-year-old member of the Green Party, who's an absolute stalwart. And, you know, there's certainly been people who have come down on a very regular basis. Ironically, Wayne, husband of Angela, this is the couple that provided us all with Christmas lunch, obviously on Christmas Day, and his reward was actually to get arrested a few days ago. I mean, he was released without charge, but he still went through the trauma of being arrested on a trumped up charge of they thought he was going to lock himself onto a truck. So the people there are amazing.
They're wearing them down. Yeah, that's what they're doing. All of this is designed just to wear them down and break your spirit. And yet the spirit just grows stronger each time they do this. Well, but I really hope that anybody looking into this flare incident really pursues it. Like, you look at the guy with the plebgate thing. Everyone wrote him off on the headlines straight away. But he was like a dog with a bone. He wasn't letting this go because he knew what the truth was. And we need to do that with this flaring incident. We need to get to the truth. Because there is too much lies and masquerading. And,
absolutely. I mean, ultimately, they are going to either have to charge somebody, and it'll probably be me, because they'll probably say that it was fired from the rocket-propelled grenade launcher that they discovered under the sleeping bag in my tent. After today, I wouldn't put anything past these people, because for me, they have destroyed the last vestiges of respect. Collectively.
I really tried to hold on to some, because I still look at every human being as a human being. But there's less and less ability to do that when you look in their eyes, when they're marching at you, when they're pushing. And I always march backwards, and I hold my sister who marches forward, so she tells me I'm going to fall in a pothole. But I want to look them in the face, and I like to see their faces. But when I do, it's what then tears you apart, because you're not seeing human beings anymore. And then sometimes they smirk or they laugh, or it's like they enjoy it too much, the brutality. And that's really quite scary, that there is a whole breed of people in a profession who are enjoying too much the violence of it. You know?
This is definitely, there are those that would argue that, things haven't really changed, and it's just that, I'm perhaps having an unfortunate opportunity to get up close and personal to it, but it doesn't appear to be the country that, I thought I grew up in. I mean, I was out of the country for many years working overseas, but I have to say that this is definitely not the country that I thought I left, 20 odd years ago. Tina, we gotta move on. We've run beyond our hour, but the guys seem to be quite happy for me to carry on. So I just want to bring up this chart here onto the screen, because this shows up the next company that is going to be a threat. This is Dart Energy. Now, this is a company that was literally on the brink of bankruptcy not too many weeks ago, but has got an injection of capital. And it is looking to start getting its bits in the ground, particularly in northeastern Wales and Cheshire. And I would encourage the people of that area to look at the respective local authority websites and the Environment Agency websites, because you have until January the 14th, which is Monday week, to get your objections in before Dart Energy are granted a planning permission to start drilling in that area. So this now needs to literally be spread right across the country. Now, I've got to bring the show to an end, and a couple of announcements to make. Firstly, last year, 2013, my tally of public presentations was 93. 93 public presentations on hydraulic fracturing, and a number of others that weren't public, but to private audiences. In addition, I spent 29 days out of the 66 on the Balkan campaign, and so far I've spent just over 30 days out of the campaign's been going on for 46 days, but I had a few days in Barton Moss before the campaign got underway. I want to be able to do this next year. I want to be able to attend as many public meetings, consultative meetings with the mother frackers as I possibly can. Tomorrow night I will be back in Eccles for a public meeting there. On Wednesday I'm going to be in the Fylde Peninsula meeting with councillors. On Thursday I have 3 potential locations to be at. But this is not done for nothing, unfortunately. There are costs associated with this. And unfortunately, through 2013, I was eating into the last remains of my own personal resources. So I can only do what I do with your help. And I want to express my tremendous gratitude to the 200 or so people that contributed to the Fracking Awareness campaign in 2013. If you're looking at the frackingnightmare.com website, you'll see on the left-hand side of the page, there's an opportunity there to make either a one-off donation or make a small monthly subscription. And the same on my own website, ianrcrane.com. We are facing what, in my opinion, is quite possibly the greatest threat to this country ever, because this threatens the fundamentals of life. This threatens the quality of the water and the air of this country. So we appreciate that people would like to get involved but can't, because people have to work to keep a roof over their head and food on the table. But those of us that are dedicated to this campaign, if you can help us in any way, shape or form, then it will be very greatly appreciated. Now, in addition, in 2013, I focused totally on raising awareness of the dangers associated with the abomination known as fracking, hydraulic fracturing. And I get many emails, phone calls, letters asking why it is that I don't address some of the broader issues, which of course had been my forte in the years prior. Well, in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to be launching another show. This will go out on a Monday evening. It will go out earlier in the evening. It'll go out at 7:30. The show is going to be known as the Crane Report. The subline is Humanity versus Insanity. And we will be looking at the multi-pronged bio-spiritual attacks being launched on humanity by entities and of the global corporatists right across the globe. Now, this, unfortunately, is not going to be a free-to-air show. It's going to be available to all UK column subscribers, to all subscribers of Uncensored magazine and the New Zealand Journal of Natural Medicine, and also to people who donate to the Fracking Awareness campaign. So that's 2 weeks' time. That's Monday, the 20th of January. This will go out at 7:30. It'll be a 45-minute programme. It'll be followed by a repeat of the UK column news for that day, and then at 9 p.m, Fracking Nightmare. Thank you for joining us. We have a hell of a challenge ahead of us, but we can and we will defeat the global corporatists, and we will protect the water, the soil and the air of this country for future generations. Thank you for joining us.